Welcome back into Sons of the Shoe. Spencer German with you. Again, 3 weeks out from the start of college football, 4 weeks out from Ohio State's season opener against the University of Akron. And it's a fun time of year. And I can't believe, guys, that as we get ready for another college football season, and we are months removed from Michigan's title run, as much as it pained us all, and even more months removed from the whole sign stealing scandal that played out last year with the Wolverines, that we have reached a point that this is a topic of conversation now going into next season. I thought this was over. I thought this was behind us. I guess I shouldn't have been that naive, but I thought this was behind us. I thought we weren't going to talk about it anymore. I hated, as is well documented on this very show, Nick and I hated that this became a badge of honor for Ohio State fans to be like, well, they cheated, so that title has an asterisk. The asterisk thing, not for me. I hated that it became this, and this was all very stupid and contrived anyway. So I hate that we're now getting ready for another football season, and we have to have this conversation again. But there are reports out there, most notably from Chris Ballas of thewolverine.com, that the NCAA is prepared to issue a notice of allegations against Michigan as soon as, now this said, this was earlier in the week. And so I think these allegations, or I think the punishment was rumored to potentially be coming down as soon as this earlier in the week, but it never actually did. We don't have any official word on this yet. So again, this is where there's some conflicting reporting going on, which we'll get into here in a second. But according to the source that was cited by Ballas, he says the NCAA could seek to ban Michigan from the postseason for 1 or 2 years. Michigan is expected to fight back against any postseason ban, and is unlikely the ban will go into effect this year, as Michigan's appeal is unlikely to be heard by the NCAA's infractions committee until 2025. So they would still be eligible this year, but the ban could come into effect down the line here, I guess. But where there's conflicting reports, and this is where you get into like, well, who's the sources on this different stuff and whatnot. But Rivals Josh Henske has said that, quote, there's zero concern in UM's athletic department that any postseason or bowl ban will be handed down. The NCAA struggled to find a direct link between Stallions' operation and the Michigan football program. That's weird to me that they have trouble finding the link between the two. The link is that he worked for the Michigan football program, and he was going to these games and stealing the signs. And then, like, what did we think he was doing? How can you not find the link? I don't understand that. But I digress, because again, I'm not trying to make this let's rehash all this and figure out if Michigan's guilty or not and point the finger and say, boo-hoo, you guys cheated. Because again, I've established the fact. I want to be clear. I've established the fact that this was all very stupid from the start. I do think sign stealing is going on in general. Now, you can't get caught, and that's on Michigan. That's on Connor Stallions. Maybe we'll find out more in this Untold documentary. I doubt it. It's probably going to be it's going to be another puff piece that Untold and Netflix does. But maybe we'll get some big revelation that we'll all enjoy about why this is, a good thing, or why it was an informative documentary for once in our lives. But I think those days are gone of informative documentaries that actually are worth our time. Regardless, again, I think the outrage over the Connor Stallions thing got a little too crazy. I understand where if they were breaking rules, they got caught. That's wrong. Not a good look. I do think on some level this is happening everywhere. But my biggest thing with this now is that, again, we're having to rehash it almost a year later. I guess not quite a year later, but going into a year later, we're sitting here rehashing it, still trying to determine if Michigan deserves a punishment or not. And my biggest thing is this. I was against Michigan being banned from the playoff last year either, because it was like, listen, they proved they're the best team. Let them go out and try their hand at it and see what happens. Live with the results. I think it was a very loser's mentality for Ohio State fans to just like try to pull on that string and say that the championship has an asterisk and all these different things just because of this whole scandal and this whole situation. I think that's a silly take to have. But I will say, like, if the result is going to be the NCAA handing down a bowl ban, then that just make like this is why the NCAA is stupid, because they're basically admitting, if they do this, that they shouldn't have let Michigan be in the playoff from the start. And again, I'm not saying they shouldn't have been. I want to be very, very clear here. I'm in favor of them having been allowed in the playoff and let this thing play out. I thought that we were grasping at straws because we were upset that they beat us for a third straight year, to just sit there and point the finger and say, well, they cheated and blah, 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 blah. I'm establishing that again right now. But if the result was going to always be that the NCAA was going to hand down a bowl ban, you're kind of telling on yourself there. Like, you're kind of telling everybody that, yeah, we probably shouldn't have let them be in the playoff, if that's what the result is going to be, which is just another reason why the NCAA is stupid. Because if that's going to be the result, if the result is going to be, well, this was bad enough and this was rampant enough and this was criminal in the eyes of college sports enough that it results in a bowl ban, then isn't that kind of a signal that you're telling us that they maybe shouldn't have been in the playoff last year? Again, not saying that is my feeling on it, but if that's what the NCAA is going to do, then that's basically what you're telling us anyway. And this is why people don't like the NCAA. This is why people don't trust the NCAA. Like, if this investigation reveals that Michigan should have a bowl ban, they probably shouldn't have been able to play for the championship last year. That was an argument people were making, was like, how are they allowed to play when this whole thing's going on? And then I was team, let it be what it is. And like, there's no putting, you can't put it back in the jar now. You know what I mean? Like, the cat's out of the bag. We watched that team go on a run to the championship without Connor Stallions being part of the program anymore. And you can't just erase that from your memory. It's the same thing when you take away championships. And so that's not what's being said here. But if they're going to ultimately just be like, yeah, bowl ban, that kind of tells us that there should have been a bowl ban from the start if that was going to be the end result anyway, which is, again, silly, and it's stupid because the NCAA just can't get out of their own way yet again to just to retroactively be like, well, you did this thing that was so bad that now the punishment is this. But in the meantime, the team went on to win a championship in the process. Is just absurd to me. If this is the level that college, that the NCAA believes this reached, if they think it was so egregious that they can give you a bowl ban, then you shouldn't have let it play out that way in the first place, because now everybody saw it happen and everybody consensusly agrees Michigan is the champion, except for salty Ohio State fans. And I'm not trying to, shit on Ohio State fans. I'm one of you. I'm with you. I just thought we latched onto that a little bit too hard. We latched onto the idea that Michigan should be booted from the playoff and all these different things just because they've beaten us 3 years in a row, and it became a silly, silly exercise. But so I can't do that. But it just feels like the NCAA, it doesn't feel like it is the latest example of the NCAA making it up as they go. If there was some sort of level of concern that this team was going to that at the end result of this investigation would merit a bowl ban, then you probably shouldn't have let them play in the playoff last year. If that's what you're going to get to here, like it doesn't make sense to me, because now they're basically saying, like, this was egregious enough to not let you compete for championships, but we let you compete for a championship while it was going on. And there's not really anything of consequence except for you're punishing players down the line that had nothing to do with it at that point. Like, most of that team left for the NFL. Like, so again, to be clear one more time, I've said from the rip that the entire scandal from the beginning was stupid. The reaction to it was oftentimes very stupid. And Ohio State fans, most notably, because we were the ones grasping at straws, trying to say they deserve to be booted and shouldn't be able to compete in the playoff and all these different things. There was a lot. There was a very vocal Ohio State chorus of people that were saying and arguing that. And I was pushing back against it. But now I'm going to be the one who looks stupid if the NCAA puts out a bowl ban anyway, because they're basically telling you that this crime, this college football world crime, reached the level of being able to say you shouldn't be able to compete for championships. So if that's the case, why did they get to do it last year? And this is, again, like I said, why it's all so stupid, because it shouldn't have been this serious. It shouldn't really, in my mind, warrant a bowl ban or a postseason ban, unless they directly. I mean, I don't know. I understand why it's a bad look and why it's a bad thing. I just thought like the discourse on the subject got a little out of hand, and I can't use that as the reason why I'm taking a championship away from Michigan. And because I can't do that, and because I already saw it happen, I can't now like try to put the lid back on this and be like, well, we'll ban them down the line here from a bowl. Like, no, you missed your window, NCAA, to do something of consequence if this was what you wanted to do. You could have done it last year when it was all still playing out and said, well, they're not going to play. But they knew that that would make them look illegitimate, even though they look illegitimate anyway, and people don't even trust them or believe them, or they think they're a sham of an organization already. And that would have just made it worse. But this is now the next iteration of making it worse, because you're basically saying like, well, we're going to punish them after the fact. This is what the NCAA does best, though, right? They're always reactive instead of proactive. They never actually do and enforce things until it's too late and until everything's already kind of played out. And it always falls back on their lap that they then have to make some big decision. And so this is what's happening, but it's just stupid anyway. And now where there's, so I don't know. I think ultimately my final stance on this is I hate that it's now going to dominate the news cycle leading up to the season, and maybe during the season, if this gets doled out here in the coming weeks or during the season or whatever, and Michigan finds out, next year, 2025, they won't be allowed to compete for a national championship. Ooh, okay. I'm sure they're really worried about that as they're in full rebuild mode right now. But I just think, like, as much as I wasn't even on board with them banning them last year, if this is going to be what the punishment is, you should have just banned them last year. It's stupid. It's stupid. It is truly laughable, and that's what the NCAA has become at this point. Do you think Michigan should be banned from playing in bowl games or get a postseason ban as a result of the Connor Stallions situation? Or are you with me that it's too little too late from the NCAA if they were going to do this, and that the whole thing was stupid anyway, and we should just move on with our lives? And if they're going to issue some sort of punishment, maybe it's like a fine or you take a couple scholarships away or something like that. But it shouldn't be in the form of this, because and that's my point. Like at this, the punishment at this point shouldn't be anything other than some of the things I just laid out: a fine, loss of scholarships, whatever, because it just feels very like revisionist history to be like, well, now you're going to get banned from playoff contention. And I think them getting banned from playoff contention would have been stupid last year. I think it's just as stupid now. Do you agree with me that the Michigan scandal has gone too far and that a postseason ban is a little ridiculous of a punishment at this point from the NCAA? Or do you think that they still should serve to or be served this form of punishment and not be allowed to compete in the postseason here in a year or two coming? And what are your thoughts on it? We'll get you. You're more than welcome to comment at the 92 to the Fan YouTube channel. You can hit me up on X as well at Spencito_. When we get back from another break, final segment of the show, and it's another rousing rendition of 4 Down territory, including a question about the future of running back at Ohio State after Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, and the game that you're most looking forward to that isn't an Ohio State game this year. We'll talk about all those things and more in 4 Down territory when we get back after a quick word from our sponsors.